This is going to be a low-ass video of me talking about books straight for 1 hour. So buckle up, my friends. You are gonna hear me just talking about books for maybe like 1 hour. Yeah, that's gonna be exciting. Just kidding. Welcome back to my channel, my friends. I'm your host, Joy Woo. In today's video, I'm gonna go over a few books that I read recently. I haven't posted in a while just because I just graduated college and I sort of just took a break, and now I'm back and hopefully I can post more videos. So if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and like this video and comment down below. During the month of May, I read 2 books that are related to Asian Americans. That is because May is the month of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders Heritage Month, and I was originally gonna do a separate video that's going to cover a few books that are Asian American themed, but I guess I just didn't have time to make it. So if any of y'all want me to make a book recommendation video that focuses on Asian American themed books, just leave a comment down below and I will make that video happen. And now moving on to our first book that I read in the month of May, which is Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. So this book has come out in 2022. It is quite different from her previous 2 books. I'm going to briefly talk about the synopsis of this book. This is the story of innocent individuals who have been victimized by political ideologies. So the story is set in a dystopian America in the future where a national crisis leads to the passing of a law called PET, which stands for Preserving American Cultural and Traditions. Under this law, any values and behavior that are not American enough will be punished. Kids are removed from their parents and rehomed as a measure to prevent the spreading of unpatriotic values. PET specifically targets persons of Asian origin, especially those of Chinese descent. The protagonist of this book, Bird, is a 30-year-old boy of mixed white and Asian descent. His mother is Chinese and his father is white. Bird's mother, Margaret, leaves them when Bird was only 9, and after that he's been living with his father on Harvard's campus in Cambridge. The novel begins with Bird receiving a letter from his long-gone mother. The letter was anonymous, but Bird just knows it is from his mother because only his mother calls him Bird. Other people call him Noah, which is his legal name. So when Bird opens the envelope, he's surprised to find nothing but a drawing. It's a drawing of many cats covering the whole sheet of paper. Little cats, big cats, striped and calico, you name it. And in the corner of the page is a cabinet shut up tight. This drawing reminds Bird of a folklore his mom told him when he was little. Then from there, Bird began his journey to look for his mom. That's the purpose of this book. I've read 2 other novels by Ng before. When I first picked up this book, there was still the Celeste I remembered from Everything I Never Told You and Little Fires Everywhere. The writing is really gentle and emotional. Some might even say it is melodramatic. However, while the previous 2 books are both set in the past in our world, Our Missing Hearts is set in a futuristic dystopian world that isn't exactly ours. I also spotted something that was a divergence from her 2 other books. Celeste didn't use quotation marks to indicate dialogue in this book, and instead, she relied on the context of the conversation to convey meaning, which creates the sense of ambiguity and uncertainty, and it's just up to the reader's interpretation. I understand that this is an artistic choice made by Celeste, and I feel like it sort of just creates this feeling of reading a children's book, like a graphic novel of some sort, and readers tend to focus more on the story as a whole rather than just a single dialogue. And now I'm going to talk about what I like and don't like about this book. I like the premise of this book. So in the back of the book, Celeste writes that the COVID-19 pandemic brought an increase in anti-Asian discrimination. This is one of the events that has inspired Celeste to write this book, which makes a lot of sense. This book is about a crisis that leads people to pinpoint China as the problem. Xenophobia is an uncommon theme in fiction, but I have rarely seen novels specifically focus on anti-Chinese discrimination. In Our Missing Hearts, the US government has some unfavorable opinions about China and started spreading discriminatory opinions and ideologies and implementing racist policies. Is this really far off from the reality from our world? I don't think so. But this kind of stuff just doesn't get talked about enough, nor does it get the attention it deserves. So thanks Celeste for bringing this to the spotlight so that more people can start paying attention to every hate crime happening in our own world. I really appreciate that Celeste has demonstrated the power of storytelling through the story. And there's this specific thing in the book that fascinated me while I was reading it. Bird and his father Ethan just got back home. Bird asked Ethan something about his mother, and Ethan ended up explaining the meaning behind Margaret's surname, Mill, and some other Chinese characters. This is my favorite part of the book because it depicts such a precious moment between Bird and his father, who has shown this passionate side of him for the first time in a very long time. He's full of enthusiasm when he talks about those Chinese characters and explains the meaning behind Margaret's surname. And it shows how much he appreciates the Chinese language. Celeste has definitely taken a creative approach to demonstrate the power of the Chinese language. It is her way of telling the readers that the Chinese language should be celebrated. Now, moving on to what I don't like about this book, I don't think Celeste has executed to the best of her ability in Our Missing Hearts compared with what she did with the two previous novels. After all, Our Missing Hearts is a dystopian novel set in a futuristic America, and I was expecting something more dramatic and progressive. But instead, Celeste has given us a bedtime story that's very slow and gentle. She's literally whispering the story in our ear, which I bet some people enjoy reading. I would assume Celeste deliberately made this choice of writing a slow-paced dystopian novel just to demonstrate the power of the powerless. Margaret's fight gets packed in this case. However, it gets boring quickly. Midway through the book, Margaret has spent quite some time trying to explain the crisis and the post-crisis era to Bird, and that part is just tedious as nothing interesting is happening. All we really got was Margaret and her bestie pedaling on their rusty bikes around an empty city to deliver stuff to people who are too afraid to run errands themselves. And this is something I think you're trying to avoid if you're writing a dystopian novel. So I really think this gentle storytelling style is a hit or miss. And another reason why I don't like this book that much is because I find the characters quite flat and lacking some nuances. Celeste did not put in the work to develop her characters to make them more relatable and likable. At one point, Celeste gets sidetracked with the tension between the Asian and Black communities in America, which she subsequently fails to explore thoroughly. I understand that this could be an issue in our real life that Celeste feels strongly about, but inserting roughly 10 pages to cover this subject doesn't do it justice because this is a complicated issue and definitely requires a whole book to be written on this topic. So is Celeste biting off more than she can chew by doing too many things at once with Our Missing Hearts? Look, I'm not trying to be disrespectful or to discredit what Celeste has done with this novel. I've enjoyed her last two novels a lot, and I think she definitely has the potential to write something better than this. That's why I hold Celeste to a higher standard. This book would have been better, in my opinion, if Celeste focused on telling the stories of Margaret and her son Bird. And now moving on to the second book that I read in the month of May, which is Yellowface. I know this book has gone viral over the internet in the past couple of years. I finally read it, and now I'm gonna talk about this book for a little bit. Starting with the synopsis of this book. This book follows a white author named June Hayward and her friend Athena Liu, a Chinese-American author who has been writing a book about the experiences of the Chinese labor corps during World War I. But then some freak accident happened in chapter 1 and Athena was dead. I'm not going to spoil how she died, but it was the most anticlimactic death you could ever imagine. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemies if I have any. June was with Athena at her apartment when she died. June then took away Athena's manuscript that she's been working on and made it look like she wrote the whole thing so that she could profit off of it. Athena had been successful since her debut novel. June, on the other hand, had always been a nobody when her first novel tanked, and June had been jealous of Athena since the days they were studying together at Yale. So it wouldn't come as a surprise when June stole Athena's manuscript to try to build her career from a deceased person's success. And to make it seem like she was the real author of the book, she changed her name to June Person and selected an author photo of herself that looked ethnically ambiguous when her book The Last Round was published. That the rest of the novel falls to a bunch of shenanigans when June, the unreliable narrator, started to justify her theft by claiming how unfair the publishing industry was, and then Athena would be happy to let her hard work see the light of day. As it turned out, The Last Round was a huge commercial success, but one day it all started with a Twitter post that claimed June stole from Athena, and it just all went downhill ever since. People started questioning the authorship of this book. As much as June was trying to get herself out of this trouble, she inevitably put herself in a much bigger trouble because of her greediness and attention-seeking behavior. And that's the basic plot of this book. I think one of the reasons why this book has gone viral is because most people enjoy R.F. Kuang's clear writing style. Her words are really clear. She knows how to describe the feelings of disappointment and dread and loneliness being a small-time author in a brutally competitive industry. Reading Juniper's monologue is almost like living through a struggling creator's experience. I get it. I feel her 100%. R.F. Kuang clearly and surely knows how to deliver the negative emotion of not feeling enough to her audience. She has accurately captured the inner turmoil a struggling author has to go through on a daily basis. Another reason why I like this book is because some of the lines in this book are just hilarious. They made me laugh a lot. I feel like this book is just constructed in a very light-hearted way. That's why a lot of people enjoy reading this book, as I do. And Yellowface is the sort of book you read on vacation. And now moving on to stuff that I didn't like. The biggest issue I had with this book is that June, the main character, is a racist through and through. We get it. But Kuang makes her characters too surface level and one-dimensional. Some plots are too intentional, I feel like. It's almost like we would expect certain things from June just because she's a racist. And she's always delivered without fail in that department. But in some parts, I feel like Kuang has over-exaggerated June's racist characteristic to the point that she's just plain stupid, like a silly person without any common sense. In those parts, it's almost like June's brain is completely shut down rather than just being ignorant. And if you haven't already watched Cindy's book review, you need to go over to her channel. Basically, in her video, she points out all the comments June made on her deceased friend Athena Liu are actually a reflection of the mouthpiece the author R.F. Kuang herself gets in real life. Because in real life, R.F. Kuang was born and raised in a filthy rich family. She seems to have all the unfair advantages and opportunities that most people are striving for in this industry. However, rather than addressing this issue with transparency and a fair amount of seriousness, R.F. Kuang manages to dilute this whole matter by putting it through June's mouth, who is supposed to be an unreliable narrator that no reader should take seriously of. Overall though, it's a fun book to read, and the next book that I read in the month of June is The Pearl by John Steinbeck. If you know, you know, Steinbeck is my favorite author, and one of my goals for this life himself is to read all of his works and reread some of them. So, the story follows a pearl diver Kino who one day discovered the pearl that's worth a lot and would make his whole family rich. Kino has a wife and an infant son whom he loves very much, and ever since Kino found that giant pearl, he's been dreaming about a much better future for his son, where he could go to school and become educated. However, it is as if whoever is in possession of the pearl would be cursed by it. Bad luck follows Kino and his family. There were thieves breaking into their house trying to steal the pearl while they were asleep at night. Their house got burned down and their canoe damaged. Kino and his family ended up fleeing away from the village and began their journey to the capital to try to sell the pearl. The story kind of has a tragic ending to it, which I'm not going to spoil. Since it is a short story, I highly recommend you all to read this novella and then comment down below your reaction to the ending or just your thoughts on the story in general. And there's this powerful message that Steinbeck has delivered through the story. First, there's the discussion of material wealth versus one's own morality, as the story seems to suggest sometimes these two are mutually exclusive of one another. You just can't have them both. This story could even give you a new perspective on material possession, as it is often overlooked that mindlessly holding on to material wealth will eventually break a person's integrity and endanger his own morality. And the pearl is also a parable of a personal journey toward that indivisible unity and wholeness, where Kino is able to claim his unconscious self and integrate the femaleness within his male identity. As it's often portrayed in Steinbeck's novels, females and males are complementary characters, meaning women has more wisdom, common sense, and authority to balance the man's more wistful and sometimes unrealistic hopes. And something creative is the use of music themes to replace dialogue. It's rather rare to see this technique being used in written text. It's more common for a film script. I think Steinbeck uses this technique to express mood and build up a certain kind of atmosphere suitable for a specific scene. There's the sound of the family, which is a positive and encouraging sound played while Kino is with his wife and son, whereas the sound of evil is played when Kino and his family are in danger and are fighting against bad people. And the next book that I'm gonna talk about is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I don't have a copy because I borrowed this book when I was staying at my friend's house. It is a 1953 dystopian novel. This book shows a future America where books are allowed, and fireman is a job for anybody who burns books that are found. Guy Montag, our protagonist, is one of them. Then one day he met his new neighbor who's a teenage girl with some unconventional ideas, and Guy immediately perceived that she's unlike any other people he's ever known. Her liberating spirit made him start to question his own life. Later, Guy has realized that he hasn't been happy for a very long time. His job is sort of meaningless. On top of that is the fact that his marriage is almost dead. Becoming disillusioned with the life he's been living, Guy quit his job and committed himself to the noble cause of preserving literature and knowledge. This is definitely an insightful book to begin with. In this dystopian novel, free will, self-expression, and curiosity are all prohibited. I'm actually amazed at the fact that Bradbury wrote this book in 1953, and the dystopian society he pictured in the book isn't that far from part of the world we live in today. While almost everybody is addicted to consuming mass media in the book, Bradbury, on the other hand, encourages his reader to look out for the unfiltered truth actively. I resonate deeply with the message of the book. Basically, he's saying you gotta leave something behind. If one day you passed away from this world, you gotta make something colorful. You gotta create something that is your own. And the most important thing is to care about stuff deeply, even if it's just cutting lawns or wash a car. You gotta make it resemble you. You gotta make it resemble who you are instead of just doing it mindlessly or soullessly. And that's a good thing to care about stuff. So if you wanna read a dystopian sci-fi, this would be a good book to start with. Moving on, we're gonna talk about This Big Boy, 11/22/63 by Stephen King. Look at this. It's thick I've spent part of the June, of July, and part of the August reading this book. As we all know, horror stories are Stephen King's area of expertise, but this particular novel is a historical fiction that's kind of divergent from King's other novels. So we first follow the ordinary life of a recently divorced high school English teacher named Jake Abbing. Jake lives a very simple life, and he goes to this local diner every week. That's where he met and became friends with the owner of the diner, Al Templeton. One day, Jake got a call from Al in the school office asking him to come over to the diner ASAP. This was kind of out of the blue. Although Jake is definitely on friendly terms with Al, they haven't gotten that close enough to randomly call each other at work or just to hang out, you know. Despite the abruptness of the call, Jake still showed up at the diner later that day. And when he showed up, he was surprised to find that Al was seriously ill and looked much older than Jake last seen him. That's when he learned about the time portal hidden inside the pantry of Al's diner, which Al referred to as the rabbit hole. It turned out the portal takes the traveler back to 1958, and however long the traveler stays in the past, every time he comes back, only 2 minutes would pass in the meantime. And every trip back in time is a complete reset, meaning whatever the traveler had done on his last trip would be completely erased next time he travels back. It turns out that Al had spent 4 years in the past and had been diagnosed with lung cancer while he was there. So it's actually been years since Jake last seen him. As it's become more apparent that Al was dying, he had a wish yet to be fulfilled and a huge favor to ask of Jake. And this has something to do with preventing the assassination of the United States President John F. Kennedy at the time, which occurred on November 22nd, 1963. The logic behind this is that if JFK lived through the assassination, the Vietnam War wouldn't have started and the history would be changed for the better. So Jake initially had his doubts, he was skeptical. Eventually he agreed to traveling back in time to finish this project Al has started and then left off, hence the book's title. Just when you start to think this is going to be a hardcore historical fiction, King pleasantly gives all of us a plot twist by turning this book into a romance novel. Yes, Jake had met someone while he was living in the past. He'd madly fallen in love. He'd even decided to stay in the past and never go back to the land of the now. I really like the premise of this book. I feel like it's a pretty cool concept to be able to go back in time and try to change some historical events. With that being said, I definitely like the earlier part of the novel much better than the later part, because the later part focuses more on Jake's love life and just sort of turns this book into a romance fiction. It's not that I didn't enjoy the romance aspect of this book. I remember when I was reading this book, I just wish there could have been more fully exploring the past and examining the social dynamics that were going on at the time period. There were brief mentions of racial discrimination and segregation that were prevalent at the time period, but I just don't feel like that's enough. For example, Jake went to a bathroom that is for white people only, and there's like this so-called bathroom just for black people. Now let's talk a little bit of the main characters. The main character, Jake Abbing, isn't really an exciting character to begin with. He feels sort of bland and lacking personality, but the love of his life he met on the other side of the rabbit hole was a lovely lady who's got amazing personality. I just wish there could have been more character development throughout the story. Instead, I feel like we're just getting this flat line in terms of character progression. Now I'm gonna talk a little bit of the ending, which is gonna be a non-spoiler. Some people liked this ending, while some people absolutely disliked it. They're gonna be like, what's the point? What's the point of this ending? I'm not gonna talk about what actually happened at the end, but I'm just gonna say it makes sense to me, because two things regarding time travel are constantly brought up throughout the story. One is the phrase, the past is obdurate, which means the past does not want to be changed. And the other thing is the butterfly effect, which means the repercussions would follow if the past was changed in some major ways. And in this case, it's the JFK assassination. So I think the ending just makes sense. And that's the end of this video. Thank you so much for staying here with me. I really appreciate it. And don't forget to like this video and comment down below. And subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Oh, by the way, I'm currently reading The Shining by Stephen King because it's just that time of the year, you know, to read some horror stories to spice it up. And I'm also reading some manga, like Japanese graphic novels. Kaiju number 8. That's exciting. And I'm gonna talk about this book in my next video, so see you soon.